Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of McMaster and the Mic. I want to thank you for joining me once again. If you haven't already seen episode 1 and episode 2, I encourage you to do that. It would mean a lot to me. Like always, if you have a comment on the video, leave a comment down below, and I'll sure in the next couple episodes I'll get to it. We're going to get right into the episode today. It's going to be a bit of a longer one than the last episode about the MLB. We're going to be talking about basketball once again, and once again, Chicago Bulls basketball, because we're talking about The Last Dance, the Chicago Bulls Michael Jordan documentary series that is going to be airing 10 episodes over the next 5 weeks and every Sunday. This Sunday was the first 2 episodes, and we're going to be going over that today, and I loved it. I think a lot of people were really excited about this because it was kind of the first new thing we've had in quarantine in terms of sports, and it was the first time in what seems like forever where the sports world all got behind, TV and watched the same thing at once, and it was really exciting. It was the phenomenal first 2 episodes about history that the generation who lived through it gets to reminisce about it and gets to relive it again, because it was such a captivating time in sports, especially basketball, and a younger generation like myself who not only did I never see Michael Jordan play or the 90s Bulls, I never even saw the next dynasty after that, which was the Kobe Shaq Lakers, right? And, I grew up in the 2010s of basketball. I never grew up in the 90s. I didn't grow up in the 2000s. So this kind of documentary is reminiscing about the 90s and bringing people back some very great memories about how great basketball was then, and also introducing the greatness of 90s basketball, especially the Bulls and Michael Jordan, to a newer generation that has never seen that. So I think it was a phenomenal first 2 episodes. It's a phenomenal documentary idea, and I'm going to be talking about the first 2 episodes and how we got here. Why now? Why did they release it now? Where did they get the footage from? And all that. So we're going to start from kind of how the series it seems like it's playing out, and I'm a huge fan of this, as we've seen in documentaries. And Michael Tollin, who was the producer of this, said in a Ramona Shelburne article, where I'm going to be referencing that a lot throughout this episode, that more is more, right? About this, about documentaries now, and especially when you see the documentaries that came up in the past with the O.J. Simpson murder trial, right? And Making a Murderer. Typically, documentaries that you watch, like 30 for 30, those are phenomenal sports documentaries, like Coach Carter or AI, they're typically 80 to 90 minutes, right? But now, as we get to a new time in documentaries, it's 8, 9, 10 episodes that air that are in itself an hour. And how they filled that time and how they're filling that 10 episodes is using the 97, 98 footage that they have, but they're also they're kind of coming like this, right? They're starting back here with probably all the way back here from when Michael Jordan was in North Carolina, growing up with his father, with his mother, with his brother, who always competed with him, right? And they're moving up this way, right? And they keep moving up, and then they keep going back to the 97, 98 season. So I love that. I think you're going to learn a lot about the Bulls that even the people who lived and saw the Bulls play in the 90s didn't even know about, right? But how did they get this footage, right? You're thinking, how did they acquire it? What was the idea? When did they do it? So back in 97, 98, NBA Entertainment, the entertainment part of the NBA, which was ironically run by Adam Silver, who is now the commissioner of the NBA, and a guy by the name of Andy Thompson, who I believe is related to Klay Thompson. I think they mentioned it in the Ramona Shelburne article. Saw an opportunity to document Michael Jordan, right, in the 97, 98 Bulls season, because Mike Wilbon said it in the very beginning. Michael Jordan, in terms of athletic dominance and comparison and his stature to people, the only 2 comparisons were Muhammad Ali and Babe Ruth. And the NBA Entertainment realized that they never really had a documented behind-the-scenes look of Michael Jordan and the team, and there were rumors, and the rumors were true, that this was going to be Michael's last season. Now, then it was his last season, which it was until he came back in 2002 with the Washington Wizards, but it was the Bulls' last season with Michael Jordan, and they wanted to document it, and they came, and you had to get approval, and they went to Phil Jackson first, and they asked him, and Phil said, yes, you can do it, but you got to talk to Michael. right? And they came to Michael and they told him, look, we want to do this, we want to document it, and he wasn't really budging, and they gave him a deal where, look, you say when they go out. We'll record everything, we'll get all this footage, but you get to tell us when we can make this into a documentary. So they made this in 97 and 98, and if you go to the Ramona Shelburne article and read, they kept 500 hours of this 97, 98 season tape in a lockbox, in a library in Secaucus, New Jersey, right? They kept it there for years and years and years, and people who worked at ESPN knew about it, but as the years went on and the footage was never touched, not a lot of people knew about it, and quoting Ramona Shelburne's article, people who did know about it thought it was mythical, right? It was like hidden treasure, right? It was the guy who recorded it. I forgot his name. Said it was the greatest documentary that he has ever filmed, right? And it had a perfect ending with Jordan scoring 45 in Utah in Game 6 and winning the title, right? It had a perfect ending, but this footage was locked away because Jordan never wanted to release it. And Michael Tollin, who was the producer of this, since 2013 on, wanted to produce this, wanted to make it happen, wanted to make the documentary happen. And the day that the Cavaliers had their 2016 championship day parade, Mike said yes. He saw, I'm assuming he saw LeBron and all his glory and all his greatness holding up that trophy, and he said, you know what, I want to release this documentary. I wanted to make it public. And, that begged the question, though, okay, fine, 20 years later, you want to make this, but why now? And a guy by the name of Jason Herrier, hopefully I'm saying that name right, who is the director of The Last Dance, said that Michael never wanted to be cemented. If you read an ESPN article in 2013 by Wright Thompson, you'll see that Michael said that he never envisioned himself living past 30, right? That he never wanted the statue in front of the United Center, that he didn't really want to be retired in the Hall of Fame because he didn't realize, he didn't imagine a Michael Jordan past the one that couldn't not do anything. He couldn't imagine a Michael Jordan that couldn't fly through air or stop. He didn't imagine an old Michael Jordan. He never wanted his legacy to be cemented. He wanted his legacy to live on and keep growing, right? And he thought that by releasing this documentary, at least for 20 years, that this would kind of be, cementing it. This would be ending kind of the aura that is Michael Jordan, until he finally kind of realized that this expands my legacy towards people who, like myself, have never seen me play, that it expands my greatness not only to a generation that saw me play, but to a generation that only heard basically legends, right? I mean, growing up in Chicago, you talk about how Michael Jordan is so great and how he's the greatest player of all time, but I mean, we've never really, I don't think a lot of people really sat down in front of their TV and watched a whole 82-game season, let alone the 13 he had, for the Chicago Bulls and his greatness. So, I think Michael finally realized that this was a way to expand his legacy past the people who saw it. And so they released this documentary. So we're going to get right into it. First, episodes 1 and episodes 2. So episode 1, I have notes here and here on the episode. Episode 2 is a lot more because I kind of stayed away from the North Carolina stuff for Michael, and also in episode 2 I stayed away from the what did I stay away from? I stayed away from like his upbringing with Larry, and I mean those stories are great, but there's not a lot that you can elaborate on that, right? His career in North Carolina was his career in North Carolina, right? And it was great, and it's a phenomenal story, but it didn't really, there wasn't too much controversy over it, right? There were a lot of great moments where he won the NCAA championship against Patrick Ewing, and how North Carolina saw him as a little unknown prospect, and then he comes to one of their camps and they're like, oh my God, this guy is the best player in the country, right? So other than that, I mean, I didn't find a lot there. So we're just going to be rolling through episode 1, and episodes 1 and 2 have a lot to do with Jerry Krause. Jerry Krause has become the controversial figure of this Last Dance series, and I only expect that his controversy will keep raising and raising because he wanted to break up, right, the Chicago Bulls, the 97-98 Bulls, after they had won an NBA title, and that made a lot of people mad. That made Michael mad, that made Scotty mad, and he never really had, I mean, his relationship with Michael had strained years before they finally decided to break up the team, because in 97-98, Jerry Krause went to Phil Jackson and said, I don't care if you win 82 games in a row. This is your last season. Jerry wanted to break up the Bulls. He wanted to rebuild, right? And cement a legacy, it seemed like they said that Jerry had short person syndrome, that he wanted more credit than he thought he was getting. And I think part of his mind, by rebuilding that, he wanted to prove that he could general manage past Michael. That even when Michael was gone, he could win titles, that he could build a team. And then he made a lot more people mad when he said, organizations win championships, not players. Now, apparently, according to Jerry, that he was misquoted, right? Now, I don't 100% disagree with that. Players win the championship, but someone has to put the players out on the court. But that's nothing new, right? I mean, if you win a title, general manager is going to get credit, but they had won 5 titles, and I think this caused the resentment between Jerry and Phil, right? Phil Jackson, the coach of the Bulls, because Phil got a lot of credit. It's Phil Jackson, the Chicago Bulls, and Phil Jackson and his team. It was Phil and Michael's team, and Jerry felt like it should have been his team. Because credit to Jerry, he built a really good roster around Michael. Now, he didn't draft Michael, but he traded for Scotty, Kukoc, Wennington. Even before that, I mean, he got Horace Grant. Horace Grant's not in this. He's not in this documentary because he was a part. Well, I'm sure he will be when they keep going, like episode 6, 7, 8, 9, when they get farther down the line, right in the 92, 93, 94 section of the Bulls, championship days. But he's got in the 97, 98 footage. But he built a great roster, but he thought he never got the credit he deserved. So he wanted to rebuild, right, and break up the team, and he wanted to fire Phil. And that caused a lot of resentment between the Bulls, the players on the court, and the front office, which led to Phil naming this season The Last Dance. Phil said, look, guys, this is the last time we're going to be together. This is going to be the last time that we are going to compete for a championship. But it begs the question, right? I mean, how did Jerry Krause get into this position in the first place? And it led to an all-time Jerry Reinsdorf quote, which still resonates to Bulls fans this day, because first 5 minutes of this documentary, Jerry he was talking about how he bought the Bulls, right, in I think 85, and Jerry Krause was a baseball scout, was never in basketball before this. He was a baseball scout for the Chicago White Sox, and he came up to Jerry Reinsdorf and said, I want to be a general manager. Reinsdorf asked around about Krause. People said, stay away from him, right? He has a way of alienating people. Reinsdorf says, I wasn't hiring somebody to win a personality contest. I wanted someone who truly believed in building a team the way I wanted it. Key words, building a team the way I wanted it. He was his guy. He was a yes man. He was going to do whatever Jerry wanted him to do, and that's why he stayed for so long. That's why even after he broke up the Bulls, right? Even after he broke up the Bulls, he still was with the team. So you can blame a lot of this on Jerry Krause, but you can also blame a lot of this on Jerry Reinsdorf, because Jerry wasn't exactly against breaking up the Bulls either, right? If Jerry wanted to keep the Bulls together, he would have told Krause, hey, shut your mouth. I want to keep winning championships until this is done. And who's to say that Phil stays with the Bulls after this 97-98 season? Who says that they don't win 98 and 99, a 7th title? Now, I'm not guaranteeing it. I don't know if that's really a hot take or not. But who's to say that they don't keep winning? Because this team was dominant. 95, 96, or 96, 97, they're going to win this title, right? Who's to say they don't go 4 in a row? But Jerry broke up the team, and he was even grooming Tim Floyd, the coach of Iowa State, to be the next coach after he fired Phil Jackson. Because he said to Phil, I'll say it again, if you win 82 games, even if you win 82 games in a row, this will be your last season. He goes to the media and says, this will be Phil's last season as coach. Who says that? Who says that about a coach who has won you 3 titles or 6 titles, right? It's ridiculous. It shows, this shows the resentment between Krause and Phil, and Krause wanted the credit that he wanted, right? Or Phil had the credit that Jerry wanted. But it's kind of like Reinsdorf was powerless. He's the owner, and he's also calling the shots with Krause. So obviously he could have said, hey, we want to keep Phil. So you can put all the blame on Krause that you want here for breaking up the team and for definitely possibly limiting the amount of championships they could have won. And I think at most they would have won 7, right? But you can also blame him for making a lot of people mad, making Scotty mad, making that whole team mad, straining a relationship that was, ruining a relationship with Michael Jordan in the front office that was already strained. We'll get to how that happened, right? But it's not like Jerry Reinsdorf was powerless, right? I feel like as much as the blame you want to put on Krause, you can put on Reinsdorf. But here's another thing, though. Do I really blame Krause for the idea of rebuilding? No. I don't blame him for thinking about rebuilding, because you look at the team, you have a 30-year-old, late 30s Scottie Pippen, a late 30 Michael Jordan, Rodman is in his 30s. Everyone on the team is basically in his 30s. You don't look at a player and say, yeah, in the next 5 years he's going to be really good. Like, he's going to carry the load of this team. They didn't really have a future. They had a present, and their present was winning championships with Michael and Scottie. Do I blame him for having the idea of rebuilding? No. Do I blame him for pursuing that idea so heavily that it just made everyone mad and angry and ruined relationships from the front office and the players? Yes, I 100% do, right? Because Michael was right when he won the 97 title and said, look, you can talk about rebuilding all you want, but we are entitled to protecting what is ours until we lose it, which is saying that, fine, we lose a title, you can rebuild, you can break us up, but until we keep winning, until we do that, you shouldn't be able to do anything to us. So, that was kind of the first episode. It was also about Michael in North Carolina, but it was also a lot about how Jerry Reinsdorf and Jerry Krause versus Phil Jackson, the Chicago Bulls, and there was a huge disconnect, right? Let's move to episode 2 now. So they established the ore of Michael Jordan, right? Oh, and also too, I love this quote from Walt Frazier in episode 1. He's not 7 foot, so he can't carry a team in the NBA. That just goes to show how much the NBA has changed over those 30 years, especially how it changed over, and he was drafted in 85. He proved that you didn't need to win a title with a 7-footer, so yeah, episode 1 done. So it kind of establishes the bad relationship between Jerry Krause and Jerry Reinsdorf and the team. But episode 2 is going to kind of show how, first off, it's going to show a very big problem with Scottie Pippen, a huge problem, and it's going to show how the Bulls, the relationship between the front office and Michael was already strained to begin with, even before the whole Jerry wanting to rebuild and break the team up, even though they were winning championships. So episode 2, it starts off with Scottie Pippen. They, show that Scottie Pippen signed a 7-year, $18 million deal. I will give Reinsdorf credit here. He did tell Scottie, he said, look, I don't know if you should sign this contract because you're going to be complaining about it in 7 years, and you're going to be worth a lot more than $2 million. What counteracts this, though, as to why Scottie kept saying yes is because they talked about his family and how Scottie grew up in, Arkansas, small upbringing. He only had one D1 offer. He caught a lot of inches in college, right? But how he lived with a family with needs, 2 house, were in wheelchairs. So when he saw the ability to get millions of dollars to help and support his family consistently, right, he wanted to do it, which you can't blame him for doing it, but Jerry did warn him. Now, Jerry Reinsdorf did warn him, right? But it's Krause, once again, because Scotty comes up to him and says, look, I want to renegotiate my contract. I'm the 122nd paid player in the NBA, and I'm vastly underpaid, and for 1 year, let me renegotiate. And Krause says no. He says, no, I don't want to renegotiate you. So Scotty had injured his leg. I think at the end of the season, or he needed surgery. He could have gotten surgery right the next day as the 97 season ends. And Scottie Pippen, with an all-time quote, says, I'm not going to screw up my summer, right? If you're not going to pay me what I deserve, I'll wait till the beginning of the season to get my surgery. It's kind of like a Shaq quote where he says, I got injured. Shaq got injured on company time. Well, Shaq got injured during the season. Kind of the same thing. He got injured at the end of the season with the Lakers and then didn't get surgery until the beginning of the season, right, which, shortened his that year's season. He said, look, I got injured on company time. I'm gonna recover on company time. So he does that, and towards resentment of Jerry Krause in the front office, Michael thought it was selfish. There's been a lot of, I know Steve Kerr has said that he agreed with Scotty, so there's a lot of debate whether or not Scotty was right or wrong, but it really impacted their season. Now, I skipped over a little bit here. So, Jordan, this was a really good quote. He said, well, Jordan said he loved playing with Scotty, and he credits a lot of his success towards Scotty. Not a lot, but he credits some of his success towards Scottie Pippen. I mean, keep in mind, he was 1-9 without Scotty in the playoffs. And that he says, whenever they speak about Michael Jordan, they should speak about Scottie Pippen. I won all those championships, but I didn't win one without Scottie Pippen. So that's a lot. I mean, that's a big quote from, a dude from Michael Jordan, who a lot of people look at, I mean, as a guy who is a little bit selfish, but I mean, kind of goes out and says, look, I don't know if I'd be where I'd be without Scotty, which is huge credit to Scotty. So Jerry drafted Scotty. I'll give him credit for that. It was a phenomenal draft. I mean, Jerry did a really good job building this team. It's just he was, like Reinsdorf has said in the beginning, he had a way of alienating people, and he did that to his team. And it seemed like we'll get a little bit more into the storyline that Jerry wanted to be one of the guys, and they just wouldn't let him. So Scotty, like we said, Scotty purposely, got his surgery at the beginning of the season. They started the season 4-4. That's not good. And they started the road season 0-4. They barely beat the LA Clippers, who were the laughingstock of the league at this time. They took them to double overtime. And Steve Kerr said, when you're a good team, 1 loss feels like 5, right? And I don't doubt it. When you have a lot of expectations, every loss is so killer. And when you have a guy like Michael Jordan who's pushing everybody, who wants to be the greatest, right? I mean, losing is not fun. And that's kind of why he resented Scotty, because Michael didn't want to lose. Michael hated losing, right? There were stories about pickup games where Michael lost, and he was furious. Michael didn't want to lose, and the reason why he got mad at Scotty for delaying his surgery was because he knew they were going to lose a lot more without Scotty. And that's where episode 3 comes in with Rodman and how Rodman picked up the slack there. But, the burden always fell on Michael. When the team was losing, the eyes were always on Michael to put the team back on track. So he laid the smackdown on some guys. We saw a lot of him, getting on Ron Harper for not playing defense correctly, and same thing with Tony Kukoc. And he wasn't worried about hurting other guys' feelings. He wasn't. He didn't care. He cared about winning, and he cared about pushing people, and that's kind of the aura and the greatness of Michael Jordan, pushing people towards the limit so they can win, so they can accomplish what he thinks they can accomplish. So, they barely beat the Clippers, and this kind of goes to now it comes back, right? So it came back to, they went through the whole 4-4 process and how they were 0-4 on the road, and it came back to the roots of how we grew up and how he said, my innate personality is to win at all costs. If I have to do it myself, I'll do it. It drives me insane when I can't win. Right? And that was established from his mother from day one when he grew up. He said, her quote was, don't wait for someone else to give you something. So Michael was raised with the idea that if I want something, I have to go and get it. I have to go and get it. And he credits a lot of his competitive drive and his will to win to his brother Larry, right? Because it was always thought that Larry was better. His father kind of got on Michael a lot, and Larry was looked at as the better basketball player. And Michael didn't like that. And Michael kept pushing himself to be better than Larry Jordan. He credits his success to Larry too. That if Larry wasn't there, I wouldn't be how I am. And how I am, my personality of always trying to win, of always trying to outwork everybody, to be the best, wouldn't have come without Larry. So then they went back. I think that was labeled in 68. They now go to 86. I think it might have been 65. That would have made more sense. I think it was 65. So 1986. So they had touched on 1985 in the first episode. I'll touch on that real quick. I didn't think it was... I mean, the funny cocaine circus. That was really funny, and how we ratted out on the 84 Bulls on how they were... The 84, 85 Bulls and how they were doing drugs and weed, and he just wanted to stay away from that stuff. And, yeah, so... 86 now, he broke his foot. And he was out a lot of the season. I think he was out close to 70 games, and he wanted to play. And then he went to North Carolina. He got away from everybody. They wouldn't let him do anything. He rehabbed by himself. He secretly worked out. Like he said, it was, I was just shooting around, and then it was one-on-one, and one-on-one turned to two-on-two, and then two-on-two turned to three-on-three, and then three-on-three turned into five-on-five. And he came back to Chicago, and all of a sudden, he was ready to go, and he said his injured leg was better than his non-injured leg. Now, the front office wasn't too happy about that, but Mike said, look, I want to play. You can't stop me from playing. I want to win. And the front office was like, look, if you play, there's a 90% chance that you'll be okay. But there's a 10% chance you'll break it again, and then your career will be over. Mike was like, look, I mean, you're seeing the negative. You're talking, there's a 90% chance I'll be okay. Let me play. And rightfully, I'll give Jerry Reinsdorf credit. I think anyone would have done the same if you're in a situation. You're not going to let your guy, even if there's a 1% chance, possibly ruin his career. That is the franchise player, and they looked at him as possibly the best player, the soon-to-be the best player in the NBA, right? So, they tell him no. A great quote. Jerry goes, if you had a really bad headache and I gave you a box of 10 pills and 9 of them would cure your headache, but one of them would make you die, would you take it? And Jordan goes, depends on how bad the headache is, which is great. So they come to a compromise of 14 minutes a game. They limit Mike to 14 minutes a game. He obviously doesn't like that, and it was very strict. They had a whole buzzer, and they would time it 7, and they'd bring him out. Now, during this, there were rumors swirling that the Bulls didn't want Michael to play to get a better lottery pick, to, purposely lose, to not be as competitive as they can be in order to get a better draft pick. And that goes against everything Michael Jordan stood for. It goes against everything. He wanted to win. All he wanted to do was win. And by giving him a minutes restriction and not letting him go out and play, he thought that they were disrupting his number one rule: be as competitive as you can be. And that goes to the Indiana game. They played Indiana at Indiana. They had to win the game to make the playoffs. He was on the 14-minute restriction, and Jerry Krause went up to, I forgot who the coach's name. I didn't write it down here. I should have. He goes up to the coach, and he says, if he goes 1 second over 14, you're fired. So Mike said, look, play me the most important 7 minutes of the game. 30 seconds were left. I think it was like 12 seconds were left, and Michael time was up, and the coach didn't put him in, and that really made Michael mad, and it strained the relationship between the front office and Mike, because Mike wanted to win more than anything, and the front office, to him, wasn't allowing him to be as competitive as possible. I mean, they weren't, which he's right, but you can go 12 seconds over. I'm not telling Jordan wasn't asking to play the whole game. He was asking to play 12 seconds, and they wouldn't let him do that, and that really made him mad, and they really thought that they weren't trying to be as competitive as they possibly could be, and that definitely was a chip in their relationship that would keep growing and growing and growing throughout the years. They made the playoffs. They played the 80 Celtics, who were so dominant. They lost. Michael put up 63 in that incredible game, and it was awesome watching those highlights of him playing. A great story when he was golfing with Danny Ainge, and after he lost to Ainge, he said, "Hey, tell your boy Dennis Johnson that I got something for him tomorrow." Put 63 on his head, which was phenomenal. So I'm just writing through the notes here. And they do give Jerry credit here throughout the episode, and they even gave Jerry credit about him, about building the team. But Steve Kerr said, "Look, Jerry did a great job," and I'm not quoting this, but he said somewhere around the lines of he couldn't get out of his own way. So, and that's kind of true in terms of winning championships, and that's why they didn't like him. The guys didn't like Jerry. There were rumors about Pippen being traded. That really made Pippen mad, especially the fact that they didn't renegotiate his contract. Scotty went ballistic on the bus in front of the whole team, and he cursed out Jerry Krause, and then a week later he said he demanded a trade, and he said if he played in the NBA again and wouldn't be with the Bulls, that obviously isn't true. He ends up winning the championship this year with the Bulls, but we got to see how that turns out. Michael thought, like we said, he established it at the beginning and he established it at the end. Michael thought that Scotty was being selfish, but Scotty said, "I had to do what was best for me," and it was best for him at that point. If he's not going to get paid and not going to be able to renegotiate his contract, it was get away from Jerry Krause, and in turn get away from the Bulls. Now there was a trade, and we found out after these first two episodes, and that's just about done. Yeah, that's kind of how the episode ended. Scotty saying he wanted to be traded and he wouldn't play with the Bulls. So there was a funny story that Tracy McGrady said that the Bulls had a trade in place to trade Scottie Pippen for Tracy McGrady. I don't know what year this was. I don't think it was 97-98 because I'm pretty sure. No, it was 97-98. And Jordan shot that down quickly and said, "Heck no, you are keeping Scotty on this team," because like we had said before, Jordan accredited a good amount of his success towards Scotty, even admitted that I didn't win one without Scotty. So these first episodes were all about Jerry Krause and about how he built the team and then he wanted to break it up. I don't think enough spotlight was being put on how Jerry Reinsdorf definitely had a part in this, but to be fair, Jerry Reinsdorf is still alive. And if you wanted to trash Jerry Reinsdorf about how he didn't really manage the 97-98 Bulls correctly along with the years before, right, you would still have to face, Jerry Reinsdorf alive complaining against that. Jerry Krause is dead. So there wasn't really any retribution that would come their way if they were it's not like they're stating facts, but it's definitely not good for, Jerry Krause has become a really hated figure in sports because of this documentary, but credit to him, he built this team phenomenally, but I think he prematurely broke it up. I think the idea of him trying to rebuild was a good one, but we did a whole rebuilding video, first episode, right? And the Bulls started rebuilding once the 2015-2016 Bulls, 2015-2016 Bulls didn't even get out of the first round. These Bulls, they won the championship the year before. And I think yes, you have a really old team and you should be looking towards the future. But right after you just won the NBA championship, that's a ridiculous timeline. You win the championship and you want to blow it up. You have a championship roster on your bench and you just want to get rid of it? That's crazy. That's ludicrous. It's insane. And Michael said it best. No one's guaranteeing rebuilding 2 to 5 years. Now, we took a shot at my Chicago Cubs at saying the Cubs were rebuilding for 42 years, which he wasn't wrong. But it's the timing was off, and it was a strain between, there was always a strain between the front office and Michael, because there were moves that needed to be made that included not being as competitive as they could be, and Jordan's personality is to win at all costs, to be as competitive as you possibly can be until you can't anymore. And they still could. They could. In Michael's mind, there's only a 10% chance I'm going to get injured, right, in Indiana. Play me now. And they didn't, and that definitely hurt their relationship and kind of started the whole breaking apart. We didn't get too much into, we got a lot into Phil Jackson about, and this is a great story too, so we'll touch on this here. The Bulls, so Jackie McMullen, who reported on these stories in the 90s, who's talking about them now. Jackie Mack is one of my favorite ESPN reporters. She does a phenomenal job, a phenomenal journalist. She talked about how 97 finals, so a year before this happened, right? They brought it up right away. Jerry Krause is sitting in the stands with Coach Tim Floyd, grooming Tim Floyd to be the next coach of the Bulls. And while Phil Jackson is in the playoffs, Jerry is allowing Phil to interview for other coaching jobs. This was before the one-year extension. This was before Jerry said, this is your last year. He was allowing Phil to go and interview other coaching jobs during the playoffs, during the Bulls' 97 championship playoff run. Jerry then has a wedding, and he invites all the Bulls players and Tim Floyd for Tim Floyd to meet all of them, and he doesn't invite Phil Jackson. So it's crazy. It was a circus. It was a circus between Jerry and Phil, and I think the documentary did a phenomenal job, and they kind of touched on it, but I feel like a huge part of why Jerry did what he did was because of the resentment of Phil. Phil got so much credit. He got so much credit for how great this team was, yet in Jerry's mind, he was just there. He was just coaching. He's not the guy who got all the players, who put him on the court, right? Phil wouldn't be the coach. He wouldn't be able to coach the people we were if it weren't for me. Or that's what Jerry's thinking. If it weren't for me putting those players with him. So there was a lot of resentment there. And that resentment of Jerry wanting to get more credit, wanting to be one of the guys, because players love Phil. They love Phil, and they obviously didn't like Jerry because of how he handled relationships between players, especially with Michael and Scotty. And Michael would always make fun of Jerry. He said, "Hey Jerry, you want to do some layups with us?" And Jerry's like, "Yeah. We'll have to lower the net then." Or he says, "Are those diet pills, or those pills keep you short?" They made fun of Jerry, and Jerry wanted to be the guy, one of the guys, and he wasn't. That resentment grew to him breaking up the Bulls. I can only imagine, though, not only if Jerry Krause wasn't the GM, and it's not all on Jerry, also Ransdorf, if they weren't in charge and other people were like, yeah, we're going to keep this group together as long as possible, and you know what, Phil Jackson, you can be the coach into the 2000s. I wonder how different the Chicago Bulls trajectory would have been without Jerry Krause through the 2000s, because the Bulls went back to what they were before. Now, in terms of talent and record, Bulls of the 2000s were mediocre. The Bulls of the 2010s, the early 2010s, 10, 11, 12, 13, they were phenomenal, right? But they had talked about in the beginning how the Bulls were being outsold by a soccer team, by an indoor Chicago soccer team before Michael showed up, and how they weren't great. They were not great before Michael, and after Michael, they weren't that great either until Derrick Rose. And I hate talking about Derrick Rose because what would have been, right? We talk about what would have been with Jerry, what would have been with Derrick. But these were phenomenal first two episodes. I recommend you go and read the Ramona Shelburne article about how they got to this point. It's a phenomenal article. And I want to thank you for watching this. We're getting better. This is my first time doing this, just talking about sports in front of a camera. So we're going to continue to get better. I was a little hectic, and I was jumping around the list here. But yeah, I really enjoy doing this. I want to thank you for watching. And I will see you, if you're watching this on Wednesday, I will see you tomorrow. Thank you.